Welcome to this next episode of Clinically Pressed. In this one, we are following up with Kat Soper of Palm and Pine Yoga here in La Crosse, Wisconsin. We interviewed Kat quite a while ago and talked about Palm and Pine. At that time, they were doing a lot of retreats, some yoga, working out of Studio 16, and a lot has changed since then. They now have their own studio space, potentially looking to expand. They're doing all kinds of great things with education and moving forward with that, which we're really looking forward to probably having a part 3 when it comes to developing a whole curriculum around yoga, and we get into that and how expansive and daunting that could be. Plus, Kat added to the family, so a lot has happened. It was great to sit down literally, even though I personally can't crisscross my legs, which makes things a little interesting. But it was a great conversation. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and be sure to keep checking out our injury series that we've been releasing. We're on week 3 of 10, so we're going to keep moving our way right up the chain of the body. And if you catch this one on its release date, you should look for medial tibial stress syndrome or shin splints coming out soon. Have a good one, everyone.
You'll do great.
I get super awkward with recording things like this, and then they interviewed me for the news a few weeks ago, and I was
I thought you did a really good job on that.
thank you.
Yeah.
I gave the same one. I'm like, I get awkward, so please just make me look cool. And they did a good job. They
Nice.
cut it short.
Cool. Well, we're sitting here with Kat Soper at Palm and Pine Yoga.
Hey.
Thanks, Kat.
Which wasn't a place the last time we talked to her.
No.
Not a physical place.
No, just a place in my heart. And now it manifested with
There
a
you
lot of
go.
trees.
It's a pretty sweet place, though. I think you've done a very nice job.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. I am into it. I can't take much credit for the plants, though. I fortunately have a team that ensure that they stay alive, which
That
is
is
a good
awesome.
message when sending people here live plants. So
There you go.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a good idea because I've always kind of wondered about that. Because it's nice to have like the life, and I think it adds a little bit to a place. But
totally,
I tend to kill plants myself, so.
for real. Well, you have your children alive, so that's like the main thing.
Right.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm working on that myself. I have like a few hardy ones, like the green ones right there. Those are pretty easy. Like
Okay.
if you're gonna adopt a plant, I would recommend that one. I've managed to keep that alive in my house.
Good deal. It's good to
Yes.
know.
Orchids are really hard, but I digress. Anyways,
So what's new? You got a few things on the hopper coming up, and one of them includes teacher training. Is that correct? So,
it's very exciting.
so what does that all entail?
So teacher training. Basically, it's an opportunity to learn more about the teachings of yoga. And if you choose to share that at the end by teaching it, great. If not, great. So it's 6 months, and we dive into a lot of different topics since yoga is this vast body of knowledge. I've tried to create a curriculum that is somewhere in the middle. Like my original training was very much on like the physical end and more of like a fitness approach to yoga, which is great. And then my current one is definitely more into spirituality and the meditation component of the practice, which is also great. And so I tried to create something that was more in the middle. And I'm really excited about it. It's myself and then a few other individuals in the community. We have a doctor, I think that's really cool, Jill, who is doctor of PT. So she's going to be talking about modern imbalances in the body, and then how we can use yoga to essentially have like a physical therapy on the mat, and knowing what imbalance looks like, and then how to create healthy movement patterns and understanding that, because the practice obviously has been around for a very long time, and our bodies look very different, and we have a different way of living. So how can we take this ancient practice and then adopt it to modern day bodies? So I'm really excited for that. Jill's phenomenal. She's the most enthusiastic human being I've ever met. So
She is
I'm
awesome.
stoked to have her be a part of it. And then also we have Tom Roberts, who's going to be teaching about meditation. He has been a physical therapist for over 40 years, wrote a book on mindfulness. So
Nice.
that will also be a component of the training. And then Sarah Wooden, who is stellar at yoga for adapting it for all body types and making it accessible, even if you're hurt or I guess hurt and injured, that's redundant. But if it's
Depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
true,
Yeah.
could be different. So she's going to be a part of that. Anatomy is definitely more her skill set than mine. So I'm really excited. I think we have a diverse offering, different perspectives, which I think is important when you're learning. I've used the example that you wouldn't go to college and learn from one professor the whole time. Like, it's important
Right.
to learn
Yeah.
from different people. So we're almost full, which is exciting too.
That
There
is
you go.
exciting.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, so that starts in October.
Cool. So
Yeah.
what percentage would you say of the individuals taking the teacher training are going to actually apply that, or do they not really know yet either? As opposed to like somebody that's just taking it for their own practice or for their own self-benefit, I guess.
Yeah. I'd say it's like 50-50 right now, with people saying that they're going into it because they want to teach, and then people going into it just because they want to deepen their practice and they're curious about learning more about yoga. My own experience is that people will say that they're not going to teach because it feels safe, and then once they get into it, they're like, oh, well, I know all these things, so I may as well teach it. So hopefully, I think that's what I get excited about, is being able to teach people that are teaching others, like, only helps widen the range of people learning about yoga. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I could see somebody taking it too with the thought of, I'm not going to teach, but then once they have it,
yeah,
and you
they're like,
said,
this is
like,
amazing.
yeah,
I want to
try
share
to
with
apply
everyone.
this or something. Yeah. Or if someone asks, like, hey, since you can, would you? And then find out they love it or something.
Yes, this is true. And there's definitely like a growing need and ask for it in the area. So, yeah.
So how did you go about even like developing that? Because Kyle had mentioned earlier when we were just chatting, we were at this Hold the Standard Summit and got talking a lot about like developing, different niches and courses within all these different things, and it can be like overwhelming. I can only imagine. I hear it, you hear it with like book writing, like it's the best and the worst thing you could ever do to yourself. And so looking at something like that, like, did you just kind of take the two and picked what you liked and go from there? Or?
Yeah. I'm like continuing to refine this curriculum like every day, which is great and probably a problem at the same time.
I can understand that.
Yeah. I was part of a faculty for the Yoga Center in Minneapolis about a year and a half when we did this last time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned a lot of things there, and I pulled some stuff from that curriculum, but like we were talking about earlier, I pulled stuff from my other trainings, and so it's been a mishmash of things, and identifying, what were the things that were missing from my training that I wish I had had, and what were the things that I've just learned over time that weren't a result of my training, but just like things I've picked up from various teachers. And so try to do that, and then also honoring that the other faculty members, like, and trusting that they're the person that's going to be sharing in that topic. So I've kind of allowed them to choose what they want to talk about. I shouldn't say allowed, encourage them to, right? We're all on the same playing field. And then Yoga Alliance, which is a certifying body for yoga right now.
Okay.
And they recently had a changeover in leadership, and there's been, I guess, like frustration within the yoga community of like not having high enough standards. And so they have a whole new leadership team, and so that is something that they're working on, so I'll be curious to see how that works out. But anyways, you have to send something into them, your curriculum, that meets certain criteria or topics that you have, and have so many hours within each topic. And so that was a nice framework to work with.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then did that, got approved, paid the money, yes. And then, which at the time was like super annoying, but now I'm grateful.
Yeah.
I got an email from the state of Wisconsin and was like, oh, we see that you got approved for Yoga Alliance. You now have to apply to be a vocational school. Great.
They want their piece of the pie.
Exactly.
Who
so
doesn't?
at first I was like, okay, so basically I'm paying $2,000 and then whatever happens. However, again, shifting my attitude, I was like, okay, this is a good thing because I've had to put together a catalog that goes through all the details that I probably would have put on the back burner otherwise, as far as like thinking through, like, what if someone's not able to come to class? Like, how are they going to make things up?
Right.
And, just, yeah, things that I definitely knowing myself would have put on the back burner. So it's good.
Yeah.
So it's good. So, between those two things, that has helped craft curriculum and the standards for the school that I am excited about. Yeah, we'll see. This is the first one, and my view is that everything's an experiment, so hopefully it just continues to get better with each round that
Right.
we do it.
Sure.
Yeah, we're keeping it small this first round, only 15 students, because I think it's important to have more like hands-on learning and
Oh,
keeping
definitely.
it small with things. So, yeah.
Sweet. So that'd be right here then?
It'll be here
Yeah.
for the most part. And then there will be a community class component of it because you're going in to teach. It's important to actually teach live humans. So we're going to have some free classes to the community. So you're both invited to that.
Nice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do you, in your opinion, with all those aspects that you said, play a role? Yeah. So you got all these like different components and both the physical, non-physical, and everything. So
Yeah.
what's the hardest part about teaching? And I can envision like there's going to be multiple things, and that's going to vary depending on maybe class to class or what you're even trying to accomplish. But overall, what would you say as a teacher?
That's a good question. I would say, it's just funny that you guys mentioned that earlier, distilling things down. Because sometimes yoga topics can be very grandiose and cover a lot of different things that are sometimes hard to articulate. And so distilling that down into language that every person can understand. The other thing that I think is tricky, and that's the fact that yoga, there's different avenues that you can take it, but the fact that it incorporates the physical body, anatomy, and then also the mind and understanding the workings of that and the nervous system. And then I believe it's really important to talk about the spiritual aspect of yoga as well. And so each one of those categories are like massive in and of themselves. And so being able to be a source of knowledge for each one of those, it's a lot. So I've tried to like continue to just be humble and keep a learner's mind and say I'm definitely not an expert. This is just what I've learned from experience. The other big thing, and I'm sure you guys can talk about this too, is practicing what you preach, and that the best way to share these teachings is to embody it, which means that I have to get my ass to class.
Yeah.
And so amongst everything that I have going on, just making sure that I'm always a student and practicing is important. And sometimes that can go to the wayside, but yeah. That answer it?
It does, yeah. It's a complex question, complex answer.
Yeah, and I mean, yoga is so simple and so complex at the same time, just like humans. So simple, so complex at the same time.
Yeah.
It's sometimes hard to remember. It's like you do it every day. You do your thing every day. Like you know the stuff you're doing, but you gotta go in with a blank slate on everybody else because you don't know what they know, and they don't know what they know or don't know and whatnot. And like you said, distilling it down where it may seem like, oh, well, they get this. Like we've run into athletes like strained a hamstring. Oh, I stretched for an hour tonight. Seems like that would be common sense that if you hurt a muscle like that, you probably wouldn't keep stretching it out for the next hour, but they don't know that because that's not common sense to them. And so I can imagine with all the planes you got to teach on.
Right, there's a lot of planes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, too, within yoga, and again, I love conversation, more dialogue about what you guys experience, is that there's just so many different perspectives as to there's like the yoga purists that are like, it has to be done this way because it has been for like thousands of years.
Right.
And then there's the people that have the approach of like, nope, it's strictly physical. Like you have to like, alignment is the main focus. There's just, and I find myself like I'll learn something and be like, yes, this is amazing. I'm going to adapt this in my class. And then 2 weeks later, I'll learn something different. I'll be like, so that thing that I told you.
Right.
It's just, as information comes out and as you're introduced to new perspectives and new information and new teachers, like it's just always continually shifting.
I can appreciate that. And I think most people can.
It's interesting. We've talked about that a bunch,
yeah,
just on so many levels.
I mean, even in my practice, I tell patients the same thing. Is like, well, I'm going to tell you the best that I know right now.
Right.
And I'm continuously trying to learn more, but in a year or 5, I'll maybe tell you something different. And eventually I'm probably going to, but as of right now, this is the best thing that I know. So yeah, it's cool. And I think most people can appreciate that you're continually trying to learn and take that at different aspects instead of having this tunnel vision and saying, no, this is the way, and just being, blinders on to everything else.
Yeah.
Trying to prove yourself wrong.
Right.
Just like we
exactly.
talked about, figuring out, is this the best way? And we're going to use the best way until it's proven otherwise. And that might take little bits and pieces from everything.
Yeah. One of my teachers right now has a really good line about that. She's like, you have to be the scientist and the lab rat. So you have to do like the experiments and practice on yourself to see what happens. And then also like be objective and being curious about like, okay, what was the result on me, and trying different things and being in it, but then also like detach from it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
It does.
Makes complete sense.
Yeah.
I think some of my best learning has been done on like trying things out myself, or how does this feel in terms of yoga or exercise or mobility, or for that matter, injuries. Like they teach you in school about this injury, and then I would treat it like a certain way, and then I'd have it, and it's like, oh, that's what that feels like.
Right.
And like what works for me to help, and then to apply that. So yeah, I think that ties in.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Like, how else would you appreciate your injuries? Like, I mean, I didn't used to appreciate my injuries, but now I'm like, oh, now I know because I've experienced that, like, not to twist this way. Or even like being pregnant was like such a huge eye opener for me as to teaching to different body types. Huge eye opening experience for me. Yeah, that's a great point of like using those situations in your own practice to like widen your lens as to how to treat different bodies. Yeah.
I would see that being one of the more difficult areas of treating, like not treating, but in your instance, teaching the different body types through practice, because even within one class, you probably have a huge degree of variance between body type to body type, even age levels and mobility levels, experience, body awareness.
Yes. Jill had some great term for that, but I won't.
Motor moron?
Yes. Thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
It's true, and I was probably one of them for a very long time. Yeah, that can be challenging in class to have the different body types and different levels and all of that. I mean, that's one reason I appreciate the size of our studio is it's not like overwhelmingly huge, so people do get, I think, more personalized attention because I'm able to like see based on the class sizes. I mean, you do what you can in each situation in a class setting. I'm sure you can speak to this too, Joel. Is like you throw a few things out based on what you see and you hope it lands, and sometimes you have to say things in different ways because you can see that it wasn't landing. So expanding vocabulary has been something been also working on as a teacher. But also the reminder, just like for everyone, is like you do what you can, and I'm a big believer that, there is no like end goal pose. There's just always more, and not attaching judgment of like good or bad. Like everyone is working with something different on their mat that day, and it varies day to day. So I really encourage people to personalize their practice based on what they're feeling that day. And So I think that kind of takes away from like, I have to look like that person and I have to be doing that, and encourages them to focus inwards versus outwards.
Mm-hmm.
Easier said than done.
Easier said than done, but I think segue into, you talked about yoga on and off the mat. I think if people could apply that more, I know for myself, if I could apply that more into the day-to-day things of like focusing inward more than outward. And I know you've talked about that too, of like extreme ownership, you know.
It's basically always your fault.
Yeah. I mean,
you can't blame anybody else. It's always your fault. It can trace back around.
God, ignorance is bliss sometimes.
Right. So how do you threw that topic out, how do you, I guess, implement that, or what are your recommendations for the on the mat versus off the mat in the application?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I get so excited and enthusiastic about yoga, is that, you know, our opportunity in this hour-long class is to cultivate qualities and to explore different qualities that then translate off the mat. Like, for example, focus. Obviously, that is a transferable skill set, and if you can learn how to focus here, then you can take that off the mat. Like, it's just like strengthening anything. And, you know, our same patterns of the mind is the biggest thing. So yoga is basically the physical practices used to get into the mind. It's mainly about the mind. And so if you have thought patterns here that you're experiencing, you can work with it within this space so that you have the opportunity to like rewire or unwire in a safe space that, you know, even if it's just like stepping outside of that thought pattern for a few seconds, that makes a difference. And if you continue to come back to that and practice it, it gets easier and easier off the mat. 100% say that. Like discipline, huge transferable quality. The discipline to be present, to focus on breath, to care about quality of movement rather than just like flailing your body around in a bunch of shapes. Definitely a transferable skill set. Huge. I would never use the word, my husband would definitely also never use the word discipline to describe me a few years ago. But I'm getting there. I'm working on it. There's just so much that you can learn here on the mat in a safe space where it's just you, your body, your breath, that you can then come back to. You know, it's imprinting in your mind and your body and everything. This is how it feels to be present. This is how it feels to not be present. But continuing to come back to that place so that you can know what it feels like off the mat. And learning it. Like, I could go on, but I won't.
It's a good description, though.
I get so excited. I mean, yeah. I just think yoga continues to shape my life in incredible ways. The more that I explore the practice, that I just want to share with anyone who is willing to listen.
It's great, though. I think a teacher should be that way. I mean, I don't think it's probably very fun to go to a teacher that's just like, oh, I got to be here, you know, that doesn't want to be there. So
I'm going to put your poses up on the wall. Just
there.
work your way through these, and when you're done,
good luck. Yes.
Leave your mat at the door.
And if they're only here for an hour, I mean, they're out there for 23 hours if they're even doing it every day. So, I mean, it's great to have it here, I'm sure, but the application out in the real world, that's where people are spending most of their time.
For sure. And from like a physical standpoint, like if you can learn to pay attention to how you're moving your body here, like creating alignment with your ankle, your knee, your hip, you can apply that as you're moving in and out of your car as you're walking. And like I used to have serious knee issue on this side, but then I started like being more aware of how I was placing my feet down in class, and then it transferred off the mat. So now while I'm walking, I'm just like
forced to be reckoned with. Look out.
Yes, or I'm just really slow at walking because I'm ensuring that my feet are steady.
That's
and
fair.
not pronating or
It makes a huge difference, though. Yeah, it really does. Mel Hempel talked about she was a former regionals athlete for the CrossFit game, just a former D1 athlete for pole vault and stuff, like just a amazing person, but just a great athlete. And she said she started paying more attention to her feet and the support and just how big of a difference. She said that was just a game changer, and how it added a lot of weight to her squat just by making that simple change. And it is like, wow, that's pretty cool, because she obviously has, you know, ground to stand on, no pun intended, but having that experience and everything. So
Yes. And I'll go back to what we were talking about earlier with or what we were talking about with different teachers, because I have teachers that talk about like your feet are your foundation for the rest of your body. And so that is where you got to start all the cueing and your focus. But then I also have teachers that talk about the spine has to be where you draw attention to first. So it's just, again, different.
I can't ever. I go back and forth for like knee stuff. Is it the hips down or the feet up?
What's your verdict right now?
I start at the hips, just because I think you can create so much more control through that can transfer all the way down to your feet. And if you're going to try and work feet up, you can, but I think you get more bang for your buck to start out with your hips, because if you can externally rotate your hips and get them to come back, you can actually feel it like screw all the way down to your foot and have your arch raise up. And so if you can start there, you can get in the process, and then it all comes back around to you should probably do them both at the same time anyway.
Yeah.
And then that's the easy cop-out answer, but the ones that I love to live by.
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, you sense like integration here first, and then transfers down while up.
And you have larger muscle groups up there too. So
that
I
was
think
kind of
that's
my
why
other
you say
thought too. Yeah, you just
can
get
make
more
larger
out of it.
changes.
And then you can go and work on the intrinsically, like really working it and all those foot muscles to go again. But if your knees are just caving in, like sure we could put arch supports in and falsely do it or mechanically do it, or we could get your glutes to actually work for you, and there we go.
Boom. Okay,
Solved.
I'm going to experiment with that next time on the mat.
I can see the argument to the foot, obviously, too. And I'm
right, and that's what I go back and
That's what
forth
you're
on
saying.
it. Like it always depends, and I guess it's to like what degree.
What all
Or maybe the
connects.
intention to like what you're working with. Yeah.
And I don't think you can, like you said, screwing the hips down. I don't think you can affect one without affecting the other either.
Right.
It's all kind of obviously all connected, and the spine too.
Yes.
Of course, the chiropractor would say this, but I'm just kidding.
Oh, that's true.
Totally joking.
That's funny. I'll add on to that too. One of my teachers has like a thing going on with her eye, and prior to, we would just be like, oh, it's just like an eye thing. But the more that you start to understand how everything is connected, and the mind, the emotions, and everything, now she's like, okay, so what does this mean? What do I need to purge out?
Right.
In addition to the actual like physical formation of this thing. So we're just talking about like ignorance is bliss sometimes.
The
About
body
certain
is
things.
too damn complicated.
Oh, so
I
simple
go-
and
I
so
go-
damn complicated. Yeah.
So back and forth on it. I had an athlete that was having terrible plantar fascia stuff, couldn't run, feel good with a couple days off, and go back, and it would hurt. So our coach at the time ships her off to like Portland to see this guru guy. And so he's working, trying all this stuff. It ended up not really making a big difference, but was like, well, there's also probably something wrong with your gallbladder, because he's a reflexologist. So where her pain was on her foot, based on those mappings, is where the gallbladder would be. And it's just like, I don't know that I can, in a 20-year-old, 19-year-old, otherwise healthy female, she's got gallbladder issues. Unfortunately, I didn't get to explore it with our doc. He didn't go down there. He didn't bite for that, but it would have been fun to, whatever labs or whatever imaging we would have had done. It would have been kind of interesting to see, but oh well.
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to be able to have the means to go and be like, almost like try and like test those out a little bit. Plantar fascia pain, all right, could be this based on the reflexology. What are we got to do to figure out? Well, your gallbladder either looks like hell or it's perfect. Okay, so what does that mean? Is it really just that the tissue was beat up and needed a break? I don't know. Oh, the experiments we could run with an infinite budget.
That would be great. I started to see a Chinese medicine doctor.
Nice.
So part of my yoga training right now is Ayurveda, which is a sister science of yoga, and learning how to use herbs and foods as medicine. Yeah. Okay. You guys familiar? Right
Yeah,
on.
I don't know it.
I read
But
some
I'm
like
familiar, yeah.
healing book that had like all the common like things, and it had like that and a bunch of other different like what their ways of correcting it would be that weren't like modern medicine. It was
Okay.
kind of interesting. It's
It
like
is.
101 something or other common
Okay.
ailments to fix with multiple things, but that was definitely part of it.
Totally. My husband's like super skeptical of this, so it's like funny. So I started seeing this Chinese medicine doctor because I'm just curious about it, and so I have psoriasis, and it came out a lot over after postpartum, and I've seen her about 3 times, and this last time I was about ready to break up with her because I just like wasn't agreeing with certain things, and but then she was like, okay, so in Chinese medicine, the theory is that the emotions actually have more to do with what's happening than your physical body. And just like, I'm pretty good at reading people. Like, did something happen to you where you had to take on a lot of responsibility? And I was like, well, I did just tell you I have a child, so.
Yeah, right.
And she's like, no, when you were younger. And then we started to like go down this path, and like it was spot on. And so it just, at least if nothing else, like got me very curious about like work with my dad and other stuff that I thought I had released. But she was like, well, if it wasn't there, I wouldn't have been able to read that on you. And I was like, valid.
Wow. Dang.
I thought it was interesting, and nothing else. I mean, like, I think it's good to have a healthy bit of skepticism with
for sure.
anything. But just, again, acknowledging the interconnectedness of who we are.
It's hard to ignore when they hit the nail on the head, though. Like, if she was spot on with it, like you said. How
Right.
do you ignore?
Some
You
of
just
those are
be
tough because
skeptical, but-
like the
I know.
questions, if you've ever, just because I'm a complete nerd, I've read like cold reading books, like how you can like cold read people. And it's like how you ask the question, because everybody's got something that they harbor. And so if you can just like pick up on the cues, it's like what psychics do. And they just are able, not to say that you went through
You're a
something like
skeptic.
that.
I'm into it.
But it's just it's a whole like science and things behind it where you can ask certain things like something traumatic happened to you when you were younger. Well, yeah, something traumatic happened to all of us when we were younger, whether it's whether
Falling
you
off
consider
your
it
bike,
right,
yeah.
whether you consider it traumatic or I don't, and then you're like, well, yeah, this thing with, and then you'll say, oh, and then they take these cues. So I'm always kind of curious about that, like. Kind of like counseling or something. Not that I've ever been, so I can't really comment on it. But
Yeah.
they just are able to kind of pick away, and if you don't offer a ton to them, like specifics, can they actually figure it out, or are they just shooting and hoping for the best?
I mean, even
Always
if it
just
is
curious
that,
about that.
which
I'd be the worst counseling patient ever. I'd be like, I'm not giving you anything.
stone cold.
Opening next month, Joel's Psychic Services.
Yeah, no. That wouldn't be good for anybody.
Picture like a lot of jewels.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's kind of like the placebo effect that even if they are doing that, if it gets you like thinking about things that you kind of repress,
For sure.
that there is definitely a benefit to it. But then also going back to ignorance is bliss, because like me 10 years ago, I'd be like, oh, I just got to put some topical stuff on my skin. And then now I'm like, okay, what deep things do I need to let go about my dad still that's holding on and like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So it's
Just because you can't
fun.
feel it or see it, though, it doesn't mean that it's not there. So, I
Yeah.
mean, on her behalf, I think it's been around for a while, so there's obviously
Oh yeah, there's definitely a
got some
reason
traction.
that
Yeah.
it's still practiced today. So
Yes.
and there's definitely something to be said for that.
Yes. Have you heard about, okay, so going more into this land, have you heard of the medical medium?
The medical medium?
Mm-mm.
No.
I am just like very intrigued by this individual. So he sold like millions of books, national bestseller, and he's a medium that addresses medical things.
Okay.
I would love for you to meet him.
Yeah, no doubt. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, and like some people, he doesn't have like scientific research,
Right.
but yet there's like all these people that have followed what he has said, and like it had a lot to do with like thyroid healing, and like psoriasis is kind of a mystery illness, if you will. So he like knows things about these that the medical industry doesn't know.
Interesting.
Yes. So I listened to one of his podcasts and like intrigued about some of the things.
That sounds the Bikram one we were talking about before we started on the 30 for 30. Like, I'll heal your organs and heal all this if you give me 2 months, and like the power of thought. Like, does he just convince you that you can do it, and your body just rewires itself and gets it done.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. See it. Yeah. Yeah, the part of my
Medical medium. Oh boy, that sounds interesting.
It does.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check it out.
Let me know.
Because it would be hard to really study that scientifically. Like, how would you? I'm sure. God, it'd be hard to control, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking into it because a lot of my teachers have talked about it, but then I got all sorts of frustrated because, and this is why I was going to originally break up with my Chinese medicine doctor, because she had recommended, and I had looked into it too, a keto diet. So high fat to reduce inflammation. But it impacted me because I'm still breastfeeding. But then when I was looking at the medical medium, he recommended the opposite of a low-fat diet. And one of my teachers actually has psoriasis too, and she's the one that mentioned the medical medium, and
Right.
it worked. And so I was like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
two
Like
opposing.
conflicting information.
Yes, just
So
like
that's the one.
anything.
Right.
Right. And we've
Especially
talked about that a lot
dietary-wise.
too, and always come back to it is, but it's what works for you.
Yes.
Like the
Everybody's
blanket
different.
statements without the caveat. Well, it still depends on the person because taking
Everyone's
out other
different.
factors. What if you did go keto and it cured or helped very much improve, psoriasis? Well, then do you go on and say, this is it, this is how you fix it, even though the other person's saying, well, no, it didn't work for me at all, like, that's why I did it this way. It's that I think the only way it's ever going to get figured out is when the genetic side of it gets completely huge, which when that'll ever happen, I don't know, but like they've already started it with the nutrigenomics stuff where you can actually see like how you respond to different foods and different types of things and whatnot, and you can send all that in. I think that's the only way science is going to sit there and be able to say like you'll thrive on the eat right for your blood type diet, and you'll thrive on keto, and I can eat pizza and drink beer and be totally fine, which isn't true, but that'd be one of those things. And I think that's the only way science is going to get it, when it becomes that personalized.
The more information that comes out, that we don't know, though. So it gets tricky. I'm reading a book right now by Dr. Ben Lynch, and it's on genetics. And so he, like the MTHFR gene, are you familiar with?
Heard it.
So basically,
All
he
over my
said
head
you
still.
can either be born, he calls it dirty genes, is the name of the book, is dirty genes.
Okay.
So you can be born with a gene that acts dirty, and you can still do things to like clean that up. Okay, so it can change. So basically, gene expression, like you're talking about. But he said you can also be born with a clean gene, but then like dirty it up yourself. So whether your nutrition or lifestyle or stress and all that stuff affects it.
What is that called?
Epigenetics, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. I've listened to one. They're like, basically, we're all screwed because your epigenetics come back from like the 2 generations before you, like preceding you. So if they screwed up, like, and were like hard on themselves, like, you're almost shit out of luck.
Thanks, Grandpa.
Which is kind of what it sounds like. It was only one guy, but it was really kind of interesting. It's like, well, yeah, that's great that you could have control of it, but you're only going to affect your grandchildren, and that's assuming that your kids don't go off the rails.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
So that's the power of yoga.
Yes.
I think.
Coming
Bringing
back
it
full circle. Yeah.
Is like the ability to consciously rewire things and
Yeah.
change thought patterns so that you don't pass on certain ways of operating to your kids. Actually, so my Chinese medicine doctor again was talking about how the kidney is like the essence of everything in Chinese medicine, and that according to Chinese medicine, when you are conceived, like everything, mental, emotional state of both parents are what get imprinted into you. I was like, wow,
Dang.
that sucks.
That's
Just kidding. But I'm glad that I had done the work that I did when I had my kid. But
That's hilarious. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I've talked to mothers that have said that reflects their children, though. That is like, whatever, the first child was conceived unknowingly, at this like college party, like drunken wild sex and all this stuff, and the kid comes out like shot out of a cannon, basically, and then
yeah.
like reflected the other children where it was more of a romantic a candlelit setting, and it's more of like a just subdued child and stuff. And I don't know whether there's something to it or not. It is hilarious.
I'll take detailed notes when we decide to start our family, and we'll see how they come
How
out.
do we want this kid to be? All right.
No, we're going to try for the cool and calm one is
Right.
definitely what we're going to try
Netflix
for.
and
Look at
chill.
Barry Manilow.
Yeah, right.
I know there seemed to be a consistent theme where like people would say, the ones I've talked to, that oldest was easiest, and then when they had their second kid, it was like totally different. I'm like, okay, that makes sense because you didn't have a child the first
Right.
one, and then the second time did a little bit crazy.
Interesting.
But again, yoga.
Yes.
My kid's pretty chill
That's
Right
good.
now.
That's good.
right now.
now,
We'll
yeah.
see. He's
The
also
terror-
7 months old.
The terrible twos and all
Yeah.
that stuff when it comes up.
Don't say it, Joel.
So I've
Power
heard.
of mind.
Yeah.
I keep saying he's very considerate. He has been since day one. He came out the exact day I wanted him to. Had a great doula that also helped with that. Yeah, he's a considerate kid.
I don't know if
I
the
think so,
doula
too.
can help when they come out, though.
Give it to them.
Okay, so reflecting back on it, again, I think power of the mind, because I think for a while I was just kind of like knew where the baby had to come out, but I was kind of like, we'll deal with that when that happens. But like with Luke and Erica, like being like, okay, now is the time. Like he came out like 45 minutes later.
Wow.
And prior to that, it was like 20 hours or something like that. So I think doula can help with that.
I think it can help. I think she could help, or a doula can not
Yes.
just being she, but can certainly help, like you said. She's talking like the relaxation, because she's told me stories too about mothers where there's a lot of stress or something going on, and then in their life, and they're waiting and waiting and waiting, and then finally once they're able to let go, or the significant event happens, and yeah, it's crazy. Like you said, the power of the mind. It's pretty nuts.
I was too relaxed.
Were
Like
you?
I just had the yoga music on, chilling, and then I was like, okay, I need to get this baby out. And we turned on Justin Bieber and like Kid Cudi, and then like
Nice
45
Kid
minutes
Cudi,
later
all
came out.
Curious to see if
Notes.
that comes back
Notes
and
to self.
reflects in your child's life
Right.
later.
Yeah.
God, I really like
Be a
this
cool
beat.
kid.
What is that?
He really
Well.
likes music. Yeah.
The Bieber baby.
Oh,
That's
jeez.
cool.
The Bieber baby. Yeah. He's
Cool.
cuter than Bieber.
Is he?
I think so, but I'm
I
biased.
wouldn't.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yes.
What else? Anything else?
All right, you want to get into a couple questions, maybe?
Sure.
Sounds good. So, do you have any other book recommendations? I'm sure you do, because you seem like you're a pretty avid reader. I know we talked about a couple last time, and without looking back, I don't remember. But anything you've read recently that you would recommend?
Such a good question. So I'm trying to remember when we talked last. I remember I said Untethered Soul.
Sounds familiar.
This was about a year ago, but The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck was a really great one.
Yep,
Yep.
I read that one. That was good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was good.
Untethered Soul, I like that one a lot too. I did.
Did you read
that.
it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did audio, but I read it.
That totally counts. I did the same thing for Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. It just allows you to get through your book list faster.
For sure.
Let's see what else. I'm like cheating. I don't know if I said Living Your Yoga was one that I may or may not have mentioned last time. That's a really good one of like understanding how to take the practice yamas and niyamas, which are ethical restraints as to how to live our life, as to how it applies on the mat, and then how you can apply it offwards. That one's a really good one. I'm trying to think. I'm totally like blanking right now. I just listened to the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, or 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra.
Interesting.
But I was also like in transit for a long time, so I feel like I need to listen to that again a few times.
Fair enough.
Oh, The Book of Joy.
Ooh,
So
yeah,
good.
Just
Did you-
finished that one. Yeah,
So,
like-
did you listen to it?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, of course.
Same.
Yeah, that was really good though.
Yeah, I thought it was good too, and it was one that I had listened to again. Go ahead.
I agree. Another one, Joy on Demand. I know this is your book list, not mine, but
No,
that made me
I'm
think of it.
into
Joy on Demand. I can tell you who it's by here in a second, but that was along the same lines. But no, I really liked the Book of Joy. That was cool. That
Yeah.
was cool.
I was like, I just want to hang out with you guys. It's a conversation between the Dalai Lama and Desmond, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and they just seem like the cutest people. But yeah, great conversation looking at different theories, paths, and then the overlap, and focusing more on the overlap and what binds us versus divides. Yeah, it was good.
It's basically like kind of two different ways of saying similar thing. My take on it.
Yeah,
and
cool. Then they weaved in like a little bit of science in there too. Yeah, it was good.
That's fun. Yeah, it's Jade Meng Tan, and I probably just really butchered it. Probably
we will link it up.
Yeah, that's the one. It's pretty cool. So the dude, he was at Google, and so like kind of like I think he was like an engineer or something there or whatever, but like went down this whole route and then was responsible for like training them and everything, and yeah, pretty cool.
Cool. I'll put that on the Audible list.
You would like it.
Good stuff.
So a new one we had that we didn't ask you is, in your world, what would you take that's something that is complicated, and how would you make it simple?
Oh yeah, you said that. You even gave me a heads up about this.
Not much of a heads up.
Something complicated, like anything.
Anything. The best example I always like to use just to get people going is we talked to a former runner of mine who's very high level, and his was 1 foot in front of the other.
I like that.
That was his complicated, all this training and everything else, but to make it simple, 1 foot in front of the other.
Can I piggyback that?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want with it.
I mean, I think, like we were talking about earlier, yoga delves into so many different aspects of who we are, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And at the end of the day, our opportunity for change is always and only in the present. And so I'll piggyback off that and just say one moment at a time. And I shared that I have this vision board in my house that I've had for about a year and a half now, and it says, make each day count. And I refine that over time to say, just make each moment count. Because that's the only time that we're in full control, is in each moment.
I like it.
It's good. Yeah.
We just got to be aware to recognize it. Yoga.
Easier said than done there.
Yes. Always
for sure.
work in progress. What else?
What else? What was the last one we talked about?
So in the first one, we asked you if you could go back like 5-10 years and tell yourself something. What would it be? Like, give yourself some advice. Well, since this is the second time around on the interview, if you could go back just to like the first time we talked to you in that span of time, what advice would you give yourself? Because that was before physical location, before
my two
child.
babies. This was like my one baby and then my other baby. And I know the answer for that. Sleep. Appreciate sleep a lot more than I did.
It's a great answer.
Right. Yeah, it's like, that's another like cliche that you hear of being a parent, and then it's true. It's true. So yes, I would say appreciate sleep more, Kat. Do it. Good sleep. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Cool. Anything else you want to mention, cover, plug?
I just want to thank you guys again for the opportunity to chat. I think it's fantastic to have other individuals or individuals in this community that want to talk about health, wellness, and being open to different perspectives of how you look at one's health and wellness. So keep doing what you're doing and just sharing information and putting it out there. It's awesome.
Thanks for being a guest and providing the information to share.
And you keep doing your thing too. You're kind of sharing some information too. So
thanks. And only what I know right now.
That's
we may
right.
have to do this
Absolutely.
again
Yep.
in like 2 weeks, because I'll learn something new and be like, scratch everything that I said.
I'd be curious to do it after you get your course going, and kind of touch base after it and just see how that evolution went. Like you said, is it going to be kind of you've got the base to work for it, but like a plug and play as you go, because this didn't work as well as I hoped it would, but this should work better kind of a deal. I'd be curious to hear how that whole process goes.
You and me both, Joel.
Yeah.
I'll let you know. Yeah, definitely an experiment, especially the whole schedule of this program. It's 6 months, and I haven't seen a lot of programs with it, my thought process was to have it give people some time to integrate things, because there's like month-long programs
Yep.
where that's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
And then there's ones that are full year, which is what I'm doing right now. And when a month goes by, that's a long time. So within 6 months, I thought that would be a happy medium, but we'll see. Maybe
There you
there's a
go.
reason people weren't doing it.
Or
I
you're
don't know.
a trailblazer. One of the two.
We'll see. One or the other.
I think the second one, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
We'll see.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, Kat.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Thank you for checking out this episode of Clinically Pressed. Go to clinicallypressed.com for full show notes and links to everything that we covered in this episode. While you're there, you'll have full access to all our episodes, insights, and shorts. You can find Clinically Pressed on YouTube or any podcast outlet that you use. If you could give us a rating, thumbs up, or a review on how we're doing, we would greatly appreciate it and heard it helps out quite a bit. To get more free content delivered straight to your inbox, sign up for the Total Athletic Therapy newsletter at totalathletictherapy.com or clinicallypressed.com. You'll get direct links to all the new Clinically Pressed episodes, reviews on some of the latest research in health and performance, and links to related podcasts and other items meant to help you make the complicated simple and optimize performance. Thank you for listening, and see you next episode.